She said it was a surprise for our 10th anniversary. 2 tickets, 2 seats. I packed my bags smiling like an idiot until I saw the second boarding pass. Same flight, same row, a name I recognized. And by the time we landed, that name would change everything. If you've ever felt like something was wrong before you had a shred of proof, stay with me. Because what I found out after we landed was something I never could have prepared for. My name's Grant, 38. I run a small HVAC repair company outside Columbus, Ohio. 2 trucks, 4 guys, nothing fancy. I've been married to Dana for 10 years. This month makes 10 years exactly. Before I tell you what happened, I want you to understand something. This isn't a story about a woman who was always cold or distant or obviously guilty. If it was, this would be easy. This is harder than that, because for most of those 10 years, I loved her, and some part of me still remembers why. I remember our first date, if you can believe it, a diner off Route 33. 2 in the morning, both of us too broke to go anywhere nicer. She ordered pancakes and put ketchup on them, which should have probably been my first warning about something, just not the something I ended up dealing with. We talked until the sun came up. I remember her saying, half joking, half not, "Whatever happens, promise me we'll always tell each other the truth, even the ugly stuff." I promised. I meant it. I thought she did too. About 3 weeks before our anniversary, Dana came home from work with this look on her face, excited, a little nervous even. She sat me down at the kitchen table and told me she'd planned a surprise trip for us. Charleston, South Carolina. Flights, hotel, all of it already booked. 10 years, she said. We deserve this. I hugged her right there in the kitchen. I'd been buried in work for months, home late most nights, and here she was, doing something thoughtful without me asking. I remember thinking, maybe I've let this marriage run on autopilot longer than I realized. There was a small moment, though. She had the printed itinerary on the counter, and when I reached for it, just to glance at the hotel name, she pulled it back a little too fast. Laughed it off. "Don't ruin the surprise, Grant." I let it go. 10 years into a marriage, you don't interrogate every little thing. You trust the person you built a life with. The morning of the flight, I was shaving when I heard her phone buzz on the counter. I wasn't snooping. I walked past to grab my coffee, and the screen was just lit up. A text preview. "Can't wait. Almost there. Heart." Not from me. I stood there a second, coffee halfway to my mouth. I told myself it could be anything. Her sister, a friend. I almost believed it. Almost. At the airport, right before we boarded, Dana went to use the restroom and handed me my bag to hold. The boarding passes were sticking half out of the side pocket. I pulled them out. 2 names. Dana Whitfield. Colton Reyes. And here's the thing that made my stomach actually drop, not just my gut. I knew that name. Colton wasn't some stranger from her office. He was her regional director. He'd been to our house twice for company barbecues. He shook my hand at our own anniversary party 2 years ago and said, "You two were the reason I still believe in marriage." I remember laughing when he said that. I looked at the seat numbers, 14A and 14B. My own boarding pass, still in my jacket pocket, said 14A. Dana was 14B, and I suddenly realized the second ticket was never for me at all. My hands were shaking a little. Every part of me wanted to scream right there in the terminal, but something colder took over instead. I slid the passes back exactly where they were. When Dana walked back, smiling, asking if I was ready, I smiled back. "Ready," I said. First lie I ever told her. We boarded. I sat next to my wife for 3 hours. Somewhere around the second hour, she fell asleep on my shoulder, the way she used to on long drives back when we were dating. I wondered when exactly she'd stopped believing that applied to her too. I also thought, for a while, that maybe this was on me. Maybe I'd worked too much. Maybe I'd stopped being the husband she married and just became someone who paid half the bills and fell asleep by 9. I let myself sit in that guilt for a long time on that flight. But somewhere over Virginia, I understood the difference. I could have failed her in 100 small ways, and none of that would have made her decision for her. Neglecting a marriage and betraying one aren't the same thing. I could own my part without owning hers. When we landed, I told myself maybe I was wrong. That first night at the hotel, I tested it. Careful, casual. Didn't Colton mention something about a conference down south a while back? I asked. Dana barely looked up from unpacking. Yeah, he does regional stuff. Why? No reason. Thought I saw his name at the airport. She laughed. Small world, Grant. There's like 4 flights a day to Charleston. For about 6 hours, I let myself believe her. I wanted to. That's the truth. Then the next morning, Dana said she had a work call and needed an hour in the lobby. I sat in the room, and her tablet was still logged into our shared photos from a trip 3 months back, a trip she told me was a solo work conference in Nashville. One photo in there, a hotel key card on a nightstand, room number half in frame. I almost scrolled past it. Something made me zoom in. I called Nikki, my sister, from the bathroom, voice barely above a whisper, told her everything. She didn't find anything for 2 days. She kept saying, "There's nothing weird here, Grant. Maybe you're just scared." Then on the 3rd day, she called back. Different, quieter. I found the hotel. Same chain from that photo. There's a public review Colton left under his real name, thanking the staff for a great stay. Same dates as Dana's Nashville trip. One photo, one review. That's all it took to crack it open. From there, things moved slower than you'd think. I spent 2 more days quietly going through our joint bank account. Most of it looked normal, but there was a florist charge across town that I didn't recognize. My first thought, honestly, was maybe that's for a client. She sends gift baskets sometimes. I didn't think much of it at first. Nikki found the rest a day later. The florist had a public website with a tracking page, and the address on file matched the apartment complex where Colton lived. Same week as the charge, same neighborhood, same dates lining up with everything else. It wasn't proof by itself, but it was one more piece that fit too perfectly to be nothing. That one hurt more than the hotel photo did, because I'd convinced myself it was nothing. I called Pop that night, Dana's father, retired police detective, 30 years on the force. I told him everything I had. He was quiet a long moment. Then he said, "You don't get mad yet, son. You get smart. A weak case falls apart the second she starts crying. A strong one doesn't need you to raise your voice at all." By the time we flew home, I had a folder printed at the hotel business center at 2 in the morning while Dana slept beside me. Bank statements highlighted in yellow, the florist delivery record, a screenshot of Colton's hotel review. Enough to stop pretending I didn't already know the truth. Our actual anniversary was 5 days after we got home. I told Dana I wanted a nice dinner downtown, just the 2 of us. She agreed a little too easily. I'd already learned Colton had a standing reservation at that same restaurant that night, party of 2. I called ahead and requested a table nearby. The night of, I wore my only decent suit. Dana wore the dress I bought her for our 5th anniversary. We ordered wine, made small talk that felt like walking on glass. Then the door opened, and Colton walked in, early, before Dana had even checked her phone. For one long second, I almost missed him. He scanned the room, saw me first, and his face just emptied out. Dana followed my eyeline and saw him. She knew instantly. I stood up slowly, calm, the kind of calm that scares people more than yelling ever could. I placed the folder on the table. 10 years, I said. That's what tonight was supposed to be about. Dana reached for the folder, hands shaking, trying to close it. She knocked her wine glass over doing it, red spreading across the white tablecloth. "It's not what it looks like," she said, and even she didn't sound like she believed it. Colton tried to back toward the door. I didn't block him. I just stepped aside. "Go ahead. Your wife is waiting." He froze. His phone rang right then. Priya asking where he was, since he was already an hour late getting home. I'd reached out to Priya 3 days earlier, just told her the truth and let her decide what to do with it. I didn't know if she'd actually come. That part I couldn't control. She walked in about 90 seconds later. The restaurant went quiet in that specific way a room goes quiet when everyone senses something is happening. Priya walked straight up to Colton, looked at the folder, looked at Dana, then looked at her husband. I expected her to slap him. Some part of me even wanted her to. Instead, she just stood there, steady, and said, "You made me feel crazy for 2 years, Colton. Turns out I wasn't crazy. I was just married to a liar." Then she turned around and walked out. No scene, no raised voice. Somehow that landed harder than a slap ever could have. Dana reached for my arm, whispering my name. I pulled away. While you thought I was dealing with a work emergency in Charleston, I was sitting in a hotel room talking to a divorce lawyer. I asked to talk to her alone before I left the restaurant, just the two of us, out on the sidewalk, away from Colton, away from everyone watching through the window. "When did you stop loving me?" I asked her. She didn't have some tidy answer ready. She stood there for a while, arms wrapped around herself, and finally said, "I don't know if I ever stopped. I think I just stopped feeling like I mattered to you, and then he made me feel like I did. I know that doesn't make it okay." It didn't make it okay, but it made it make sense, and somehow that was worse in a way, because it meant the marriage hadn't ended in that restaurant. It had ended months earlier, quietly, one business trip at a time, long before I ever saw that boarding pass. The weeks after were messy. Dana called, texted, showed up at the house wanting to talk. I let the lawyers handle it. The florist record, the hotel review, the pattern of hidden spending, none of it made the divorce clean or easy, but it made the truth impossible to argue with. The house eventually sold. The money got split according to what the court decided was fair, which is its own long, unglamorous process. Colton lost his job about a month later. Company policy prohibited relationships with people he directly managed, and Dana technically reported to him on regional accounts. An anonymous tip to HR ended that fast. Priya filed for divorce the same week. 2 marriages, 1 affair. Nobody walked away from it clean, not even me. I got the truth. I got my freedom. What I didn't get back was the 10 years I spent believing in someone who, somewhere along the way, stopped being who I thought she was. Winning doesn't undo that. It just gives you somewhere to stand while you carry it. I moved into a smaller place about 4 months after that dinner. The business kept growing once my head was clear enough to focus on it. Nikki checks in every week. Pop still calls every Sunday with advice I didn't ask for, and I don't mind it anymore. Last month, I booked a flight. Nothing special, just needed to clear my head somewhere new. I sat down in my seat, and there was an empty one right beside me. For a second, old habit, I braced for that hollow feeling. It didn't come, because I finally understood something. I didn't lose my future that day at the gate. I lost someone who was never actually as much a part of it as I thought she was. Those are not the same thing. It took me a long time to tell the difference. She reserved 2 seats that day, thinking she was planning the perfect getaway behind my back. Turns out, I only needed 1. For myself. If this story hit you the way I hoped it did, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, when do you think a marriage actually ends? The moment someone finds out, or the moment someone stops trying?